recovered by Israeli troops in Gaza allegedly reveal the terror group's, quote, direct involvement in an activist mission currently sailing dozens of boats to challenge Israel's blockade of the Strip, Israel's foreign ministry said on Tuesday. This is from a Times of Israel article, and this article goes on. Maybe we'll read a bit more of it, but the point of me reading it now is to point out that Israel is not just well aware that the so-called I don't think they're calling themselves peace activists anymore, actually, but the flotilla heading towards Israel is a Hamas, a terrorist-sponsored group of people who are saying flat out that their intention is to force their way into territory controlled by Israel during a time of war in order to help the people who started that war against Israel. Israel's, uh, on the one hand, their awareness of this of the terrorist involvement is not all. They're letting the world know they're spending resources letting the world know, letting people who wouldn't believe anything that comes out of Israel, if Israel said, the sky is blue, they would say this is a lie. They're spending resources telling people that this is a terror-sponsored flotilla. Yet they are behaving as if these are, importers who got their papers mixed up. So what's going to happen here is well, we will find out very soon if they are going to continue as they are claiming, but this will end badly. Certainly, the way Israel is approaching it right now, it will. If it doesn't end badly with the current 50 boat flotilla, it'll end badly with the next one of 500 or the following one of 5,000. Um, if there's one thing that we can learn from Israel's approach to terrorists in general, if there's one lesson, it's that weakness in how you respond to them emboldens them. But Israel does that in order to supposedly de-escalate the situation, knowing that any such de-escalation attempts on Israel's part are met with, okay, we manage this. Let's see what else we can get away with on the terrorist part and the part of their supporters. So, yeah, how many times Israel has to learn this lesson and how badly it has to learn this lesson, I don't know. But yeah, we are gonna find out soon with this specific flotilla. First of all, what it is that they're planning, and yeah, where it's going to take us. In the past, there have been violent, we talk about the Mavi Marmara, there has been violence planned by past flotilla. And is any of these, are any of the people on any of these 50 boats planning violence? Because if they are, there will be violence and Israelis might die. And what is absolutely certain is that Israel will be blamed no matter what. Welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm Razi Ginsburg. I'm joined by James Valiant. James, your thoughts as the ships approach Israeli waters.
Well, this isn't the first time, is it? And we knew what the intention was the first time. And even if we didn't have this intelligence that the Times of Israel is reporting, there would be absolutely no, in fact, it would be against Israel's security interest to let this flotilla approach Gaza. As you point out, this is a time of war. Their intention is to supply the enemy in a time of war. They are intervening in a war zone. They are aggressors. Let me just repeat, they're aggressors. If anyone tried to feed Adolf Hitler or his population or his regime during World War II, we would regard them as being Nazi sympathizers, actively, materially supporting the enemy during a time of war. Greta and her flotilla and all of her compatriots are pro Hamas. They're intervening in a war on the side of the people who attacked Israel. They're intervening to provide. Now, we know what happens to this aid. Everyone knows what happens to this aid. It's not just for random people there who happen to be there. Although the population point we've made many, many times, there's no real distinction between the population and Hamas. But this is going to be taken by Hamas. This is supplies for the enemy, for the active enemy that's holding hostages. So she wants to feed hostage takers so they can continue their hostage taking. She wants to feed people who are continuing to fight Israel. Hamas itself. I mean, even Keir Starmer says Hamas can't be part of the Palestinian state he's going to recognize. Even Saudi Arabia says Hamas can't be part of any Palestinian state. Greta apparently knows no such distinction, and she's perfectly willing to supply, feed, support Hamas. She is a war enemy. Her ships can be shot out of the water. She's done this before, and you're right. Israel's light slap on the hand is not going to stop her from the next time. It'll be, like you point out, next time it'll be the Spanish Armada size and with the same crusader like moral intent behind it. But the point is that I don't care how peaceful these people claim to be. They are active parts of the war and they're intervening in a war and they should be treated as such.
Yeah. Now, the even the notion that they actually want to supply aid to anybody in Gaza is complete bullshit. And we know that not just because they've had offers from Israel, which of course they'll reject, to dock in Ashdod, and Israel will pass that aid along to Gaza as it, passes its own aid into Gaza after it checks that there's nothing, no military aid, of course, completely ignoring the fact that even food and medicine are military aid at a time of war. Um, but a similar offer came from the Vatican, and governments who have sent, at least the Italian government, and I think the Spanish government as well, who have sent Navy ships to accompany the flotilla and have since turned around because Israel made some noise there. Um, they have told these people, don't do it, especially now with Trump's peace deal and so on. But they are clear that this is not about aid. When they say that this is about breaking the blockade, that's what it is. Now, the blockade is a part of a war that the Palestinians have started against Israel. Israel is imposing a blockade because the enemy that started this war wants weapons to use in that war. So saying we're going to break the blockade is an act of war. Now, I have to say, it's easy for us here to talk about what Israel should do, and it's much more difficult for Israel to do anything, especially acting on the international stage. And I have to say, if Israel sinks one of those ships, it will be condemned internationally, by the international community. I think the U.S. will also distance itself, at least on this. I am sure that ambassadors of other countries in Israel will be called back for consultation. Israeli ambassadors will be called in for reprimanding, maybe kicked out. Israel will certainly be kicked out of the Eurovision, of UEFA, of ULEB, of all sorts of sports and cultural competitions and organizations and so on. But something else that will happen if Israel sinks one of those ships is that the other 49 will turn around and that future flotillas will be, if they even happen, will be smaller. And the people who actually join such flotillas will have to drop at least some of the bullshit and will be clear by just doing this that they are going in for a fight, that's what they're looking for. And Israel will have shown rather than said that they are ready for that fight and that people who start that fight will get what they're looking for. So this day will have to come. Like I said, it might not come with this 50 ships flotilla. It might come with the next one that's 500. At some point, Israel won't actually have the people, the manpower to board these ships because there are more people in the world who would like to see the job that Hitler started be finished than there are Israeli Navy people. So yeah, Israel, this
Stuff.
is going to be one of the toughest decisions. But look, the country that did the amazing operation against Hezbollah in Lebanon, the amazing first few minutes of that war with Iran, who struck Hamas leadership, attempted to strike Hamas leadership in Qatar, yeah, Israel has shown that it has balls that none of us expected it to have. This is a moment where that should be considered. Now, one more thing, James. Of those 50 ships, I'm sure Israel knows who is on which ship. So it can choose its target carefully. We talk about Greta, who is the poster child for, this century's kill all the Jews movement, but she is a poster child. There are people like Tiago Avila, who, who was on the previous flotilla, was also in Hassan Nasrallah's funeral. This guy is, has dedicated his life to killing the Jews almost to the point of taking up arms. Many others we know, again, as Israel has shown, that Hamas is behind this. There are people who are more Hamas than others, and find the ship where they are, sink that ship, take whatever crap the world is already throwing at you and will throw a little bit more, and you will have changed the whole way that this is being fought against Israel, at least by those in the West who are not true believers in Islam and believe that the moment they're on a ship that's sunk, they're meeting their 72 virgins.
You know something, Rossi? I think you just convinced me. I was going to be skeptical and push back on you. You know, if you can stop the flotilla in some non-lethal way, if you can turn them back or capture the lead vessels or something, I would have said, okay, why not try to capture them, arrest these people, prosecute them, put them in the prison that they belong in. But you're actually suggesting find the worst of these culprits aboard these ships and take at least one of their ships out of the water as both justice and a form of deterrence. And, I think you just persuaded me. There are people in these, and this intelligence that the Times of Israel is reporting on does indicate that these are directly connected with Hamas. So I have, well, obviously, morally, I have no problem with what you're saying. They should be treated like, as I said in the beginning, they are actively intervening on behalf of one of the combatant parties in a war, and they ought to know better. They are joining ranks with Hamas terrorists, and morally speaking, absolutely. There's nothing that should prevent Israel from doing what you just said. I was thinking, what is the best long-term strategy? I was thinking, well, maybe if you can just arrest the ships in some way, hold them at sea, or arrest the leaders of it from the ships. But no, now that I think about it, I think you're exactly right. Find the ship with the most Hamas connected, terrorist connected figures on that ship, blow it out of the water. Blow it out of the water, as they have every right to do. We've been around the block on these blockades for many years now. Within days of taking power in Gaza, Hamas started lobbing rockets into Israel, as I've been saying. This has been going on now for 20 years, in effect. And so, what is Israel supposed to do? Let trade go on with Gaza that entire time? And so, Israel gets blamed for creating an open air prison because they blockaded Gaza, and there were blockades of Gaza as Israel was getting bombed by Hamas over the better part of the last 20 years now, of course. And anyone who thinks that was morally wrong is morally wrong. You do not let the people trade with the people who are lobbing rockets at you. I don't care how successful or unsuccessful they are. In this case, it's still worse. She is feeding people in the course of this war to destroy Hamas, even as Hamas is still holding hostages and making threats and so forth. Now, at this point, post October 7th, to the blockade is the only morally correct thing to do. And at this point in the war, I think you're exactly correct. Blowing at least one of their ships out of the water to make a point and send the rest, turn tail and go home, I think is a great idea.
Yeah, and look, the whole thing with arresting them, we remember the last one a couple of months ago where they brought Greta this pastrami sandwich wrapped in plastic, put her on a plane, all the things that she, I don't know if she still pretends to be an environmentalist, like she willingly wears this Palestine football or soccer jersey that, is made of polyester. But But yeah, calling them TikTok terrorists or whatever. Look, I enjoy alliteration as much as the next guy, but this is not how you win a war. And last time they were arrested, they were, doing videos claiming they're being held hostage. They were asked if they would please watch the October 7th atrocities video, and they refused, and Israel allowed them to refuse. And they just had to sign papers saying they're never coming back, and they leave. And now they're coming back. It's not different people. Greta signed those papers. Tiago Avila must have signed those papers, otherwise he would still be in prison, or Israel released him for some other reason. So yeah, that has been tried, and the soft approach, as has always been the case, as has been the case with Israel's dealing with the Palestinians, and as is the case with Israel's dealing with the supporters of the Palestinians, the soft approach encourages them to keep doing more because Israel has sent the message that it will not stand up to those people. Um, Let's read a little bit more of this article. Just I'm going to go through it quickly just so that we get some of the context. So, in a statement, the ministry, this is the Israel's foreign ministry, claimed that the documents, quote, show a direct link between the flotilla leaders and the Hamas terrorist organization, unquote, especially the group's foreign arm, the Palestinian Conference for Palestinians, or PCPA. PCPA was established in 2018, and according to Israel, quote, functions as Hamas's representative body abroad, operating de facto as Hamas's embassies. PCPA was designated by Israel as a terror group in 2021 due to it being a Hamas arm. Okay, there's a lot
Blow them
more.
out of the water. You've convinced me. Uncle, Rosie, you're absolutely right. Something needs to be done. They're intervening militarily in a war. And they've already been warned. They've already been, the organization involved has already been declared an arm of Hamas. That's that. You don't let Hamas ships approach Gaza when you're fighting a war with Hamas in Gaza. I mean, that should be a basic of warfare. And I don't care what the United States, even the United States says here, Israel, you've got to do it. I can't believe it, Larasi. During the course of the last few minutes, you absolutely convinced me that the only morally correct thing for Israel to do would be to blow up at least one of these ships out of the water, find the one with the worst people on it, and send the correct message, and turn the others away violently. They are intervening violently. They are feeding the hostage keepers. That is their goal. So yeah, and they're working with and for an arm of Hamas. Well, that's that. We're going to let Hamas ships approach Gaza during a war against Hamas? In no other war context would that be even permissible in the history of warfare. Should that be permissible? No. And if Israel stands up to international opinion in this way, it may be rough, but I think that on balance, that's the correct message to send. We will do what it takes to defend our own people. And you can't be feeding our enemy while we're engaged in war with them. No, nor can you be working with an arm of Hamas to do so. Wow, once you gave me that, now it almost seems morally mandatory that a forceful response come from Israel, in my view, morally speaking.
Well, I'm glad I convinced you, and BB, as always, I know this is what you do at 7:30 p.m. Israel time, so even on Yom Kippur. So yeah, do what needs to be done. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super
I
chat,
can think
and
of
thank
no
you, Bonnie,
way
for
to
the super
atone for the
chat.
sins of
Two people
people.
who are doing what needs to be done. Uh, yeah, what were you saying, James?
I can think of no better Yom Kippur thing to do, atone for sins, than to take out an arm of Hamas and people who support Hamas. So yeah, I think it would be
Yeah.
very appropriate at this season of the year. Yeah.
By the way, this is not the first time that people attack Israel on Yom Kippur. I don't know if it's a coincidence that they happen to have been sailing for like a month and a half at least and happen to land in Israel on Yom Kippur, but whatever. I want to show you a video from yesterday. This is one of the people on the flotilla. Of course, they're always streaming on multiple streams that somehow can never catch any Israeli drone or ship. But let's watch this video.
My name is Yasmin Ajar, steering committee member of Global Sumo Flotilla. Right behind me is the military vessel. They are intercepting us right now. We do not know how they will intercept us. I can currently only see one big military vessel. They have their lights off. We are in position right now. We're telling everyone to put their life vests on. Again, we are a non-violent mission. We carry nothing but humanitarian aid. We are hundreds of activists from around the world. We are almost 50 vessels, and we are being currently intercepted by the Israeli occupation forces in international waters. We are 145 nautical miles away from the shores of Gaza. And again, they are breaching international law. And if they attack us, this would be a war crime on the long list, added to the long list of war crimes of the Zionist.
All right, it was cut off right at the end, and the only reason I didn't interrupt before is because the last thing she says was to call Israel the Zionist entity, which is what the Iranian regime has been doing, because it doesn't want to say Israel. But yeah, we can post a link to that if you want to see that is actually what she said. I mean, so much of this is
Well,
they are literally heading to a war zone on purpose in order to side with one sides of the war and playing victim while doing so, but also saying so much stuff that, if true, they were surrounded by Israeli vessels. Now, I saw some of this in Israeli media claiming something similar, but how is it that they can never show any Israeli vessel, any Israeli drone, any of the things that they keep saying are all around them, and they all have cameras? So, yeah.
it is kind of funny. But the point is, she's not on a peaceful mission. She's on a mission of violence. She's on a mission to feed the perpetrators of the atrocities of October 7th. That's what she's on a mission to do. She's actively intervening in a war to materially support one of the combatant parties. She is on an act, it's a mission of violence. And she gives away the whole thing when she says, that I was about to say, Zionist entity. Okay, she doesn't recognize the legitimacy of Israel. She's all in with Hamas's effort to want to destroy Israel and kill every Jew in the region. That is obviously what she just sort of let slip there. Zionist entity, which means she's calling for a genocide, the kind of genocide that Hamas and Hezbollah have long stood for. So she is all in on all of Hamas's goals here, and she's actively intervening in an act of violence. And she gives it away. The headgear that she's wearing gives it away. And the panic is also way overdone. I can't even. What is she reacting to? There is an Israeli ship off the coast. I think they said at one point there was a cyber attack because communications were being shut down. Well, yeah, as you approach a war zone, in any kind of vehicle, on the ship, on the sea, on the air, where any vehicle approaching a war zone, expect your communications to get interfered with. It's so basic. She doesn't recognize any right of Israel to defend itself. She is an anti-Semite calling for violence against Israel and the destruction of Israel in support of Hamas. It's that simple, straight up. She just sort of admitted it there.
Yeah, and the communications interference is what allegedly was the reason for Italy and Spain to pull back their vessels. The Turkish vessel that joined the flotilla as well is still there. That's another thing Israel should watch out for. Turkey would love to get involved in this if they can and if they think they can get away with it. And Trump loves Erdogan, as he keeps telling us. So we don't know what is going to happen there. We talked a couple days ago, or yesterday, about how it was a couple days ago, how Obama forced Netanyahu to apologize to Erdogan over the flotilla where Israelis were attacked and then some of the terrorist supporters were killed. Just like Trump made Netanyahu apologize to the Prime Minister of Qatar. So Turkey, I think, is emboldened and also doesn't need to be. Erdogan is a madman, so he is a danger, and perhaps with Iran being kind of downgraded at the moment, maybe the biggest danger to the Middle East. So yeah, Israel, this is the moment where if they don't turn around when you tell them to, the right thing to do is to act militarily with force in a way that will draw the battle lines in the clearest of ways. If you try to intervene in the war that the Palestinians started against Israel and insist on continuing against Israel, if you try to intervene on their behalf, this is an act of war on your part, and Israel will defend itself against you as well as the Palestinians. Parting thoughts?
I have to fully agree. I mean, you wait until they get close enough to be, it's clear that they're intervening you don't, I would avoid hitting them in international waters. Once they got close enough, blow them out of the water. You've convinced me, Razi. I think that is the correct approach, the only moral approach, the only practical approach. The only thing that's going to work in the long term for Israel's security, honestly, and obviously the only moral thing to do when you're faced with such a vicious enemy. So, yeah, you convinced me,
Well,
Ross.
I expect that this will be the topic of tomorrow's episode of the Daily Objective or Friday, but you never know what's going to happen, especially nowadays in the Middle East. What I do know is that the reality show will not air on October 7th. On October 7th, we will have a longer than usual episode of the Daily Objective. The people on that show will be myself and Raka, who is returning for the first time since last year's October 7th. We will have that link up soon so you can set up a notification. The reality show is gonna stream live today in a couple of minutes. And you guys will be talking about Megyn Kelly and her questions that she asks. That's all she's doing. She's just asking questions. Thanks, James. Thanks, everybody, for watching. The reality show starts in a couple minutes.
Be safe.